Divorce is far more than just a legal battle. It's an emotional minefield. What most people fail to realize is that we all cope with life-altering events so differently because our reactions are actually shaped by our unique temperaments. In today's video, we'll uncover how understanding your personality can empower you or someone you know to navigate the challenges of divorce more effectively. It can be really helpful to understand some of the predictable aspects of temperament and personality, in part to help you understand why you may have acted some of the ways that you did, and also in understanding how your ex responded in some of the ways that they did. So there are some aspects or characteristics of our temperament that predictably determine how we divorce, and also some of the predictable challenges of divorce and how to cope. So let's start with the C. One of the kind of interesting things is sometimes C's will sit on the decision of whether or not to divorce for years and years and years. A C hardly ever says or does anything without thinking through it first. And so sometimes a C will even have decided that they're going to divorce, but still be uncomfortable with executing on that. And so they'll sit there wanting to feel completely settled about the decision to divorce before they move forward with it. And in just a minute, we'll circle back around and talk about some solutions of what to do to be able to manage that well. We also talk a lot about that in the Strengths and Challenges video on core and divorcing. The divorce process for an O can be equally challenging, but for very different reasons. Because O's are driven by positive emotion, they want to be feeling good, and because O stands for optimism, and one of the most predictable traits of the O brain is thinking that there's a way to make anything work. You present an idea to an O, and they are the first ones to say, oh yeah, we can totally do this. The O brain is really good at seeing what could be and getting excited about what could be. And so it can be really difficult for an O to accept two things. One, to accept the fact that they're going to have to go through this really unpleasant process and making the choice to move into this period of life that's going to be so unpleasant is really difficult for the O brain. And then it's also really difficult for an O to come to terms with the fact that even though there is a scenario, they can see the possibility of how their relationship could work. An O will ignore the writing on the wall for a long time. They can go through a really difficult transaction, even an abusive moment, and get a little bit of space from that, and because they have such a hard time sitting in the negative emotion, they'll shift gears mentally, they'll forget about that, they'll want to focus on positive things and positive traits and positive aspects of the relationship. O's can find themselves ignoring data point after data point after data point that this is not a good relationship and that this is not a good place for them or even for their kids. Another predictable complication for the divorce process for an O is that they don't want to be the bad guy. O's really want people to think well of them. They want people to like them. And the thought of doing something and the act of doing something that is going to cause somebody else pain is really difficult for the O. And again, when it's the best decision, the healthiest decision to get a divorce, if the other person doesn't want a divorce and they're making promises, I promise I'll change and give me another chance and I promise this and I promise that, the O can really struggle feeling guilty for moving forward with the divorce, even when they know that it's the best or the rightest or the healthiest choice. It can be really difficult for the O to do. The divorce process for the R can be very different than what we've been talking about with C's and O's. R's are intense, and one of the strengths of the R brain is getting things done. And what creates emotional strain for the R is lack of resolution. The R feels distress and undone, and that emotional stress motivates the R to deal with whatever it is. And so once the decision for divorce has been made, R's tend to act quickly and move forward quickly. Once an R has made the decision to divorce, or their partner has made the decision to divorce, an R will drive, they'll move, they'll call the attorney, they'll get the ball in motion. They are really good at creating movement, and so they work through those obstacles. And they're also really good at blowing through obstacles, which makes it so that they tend to move through the divorce process much more quickly than any other temperament type. When an R decides that they're going to divorce you, or you've decided that they're going to divorce, when you've decided that you're going to divorce them, there can be a lot of intensity, and there can be a lot of what can feel really mean when you're divorcing an R, or when you are an R divorcing. R's can get really aggressive and confrontational. Another predictable aspect of the R brain, because they live in the future, R's don't look back a lot. They look forward. Once the decision's been made, they tend to move forward with it. And then once they're going forward, they tend to get through the divorce process and on with life more quickly than other temperament types. Now let's talk about E's. In the next video that hopefully you'll watch after this if you want to keep learning about this. In the next video we talk about predictable strengths of temperament, of each of the temperaments, and some of the predictable challenges of each of these personality types. One of the biggest strengths of the E temperament is their tenacity. E's are driven by doing things the correct or the right way. And they have tremendous tenacity and fortitude to grind through obstacles in order to do things in the best way, or the way that they think is the best way. And so what happens a lot of times is E's can get stuck doing something a lot longer than it is healthy to keep doing something. And so that can really show up in this divorce process, because E's have this, like, there is the ideal way that this is supposed to look. And so this is the other predictable thing that can happen is if they're going to divorce, they're going to do that the right way. And so an E can be stuck in litigation for centuries. They will fight for what they think is right, and they will sit there and keep going and keep litigating and keep fighting until the other person, lots of times until the other person, unless they're an E also, just throws their hands up. Okay, so now let's circle back. I want to highlight a little bit more how you can manage this in a healthy way. So if you're a C, it's important for you to proactively create comfort and connection. You know, take the time to paint your house the way you want it painted. You know, make sure that you create your new space into a comfortable place. And you can really help yourself move through this if you can create your nest. The other thing that C stands for is connection. C's need good, deep connection with people. It's really important as a C to make sure that you identify 2, 3, 4, 5 people that are willing to show up for you. Doing things to create connection with people, super powerful as you move through this difficult moment in your life. You O's out there, it's really important that you do things to create fun at this moment in your life. You know, take some time and write down, you know, even just 3 to 5 things that you really enjoy doing. Leverage your drive for fun, because when an O isn't enjoying their lives, when they're not getting some positive emotion going on, that is more challenging for the O than any other personality type. So it's really important that you continue to do that. And more than any other temperament type, it's super important that you do things to be social. And lots of the time, you're not gonna feel like doing that. And so you're gonna have to force yourself. If you can ritualize social interaction so that you don't have to make it happen for you all the time, then it will make it a lot easier for you to maintain some of that social connection without feeling like you've got to muster up a lot of gumption that you feel like you don't have right now. Okay, so for you R's, it's really important when something's on the screen of the R wants to get it resolved and off of the screen as soon as possible. And so you might want to have somebody that you can invite to kind of work as the brakes for your brain in this process. Have somebody that you trust that you can kind of bounce ideas off of, and give them permission to say, hey, you might want to slow down a little bit, because this is really about a stitch in time can save 9. If you just go with your R's desire to get it done, you can end up making a bigger mess than needs to be in this situation. Essentially what I'm saying is that what leads to the R's brain's ability to create movement so well is so often the fact that the amygdala, the fight, flight, or freeze response, the amygdala grabs the reins really quickly for the R brain. Okay, so one of the challenges for the E brain, for you E's out there, the way that your brain wants to handle this can actually keep you stuck in this moment for far longer than you need to be. The E brain naturally looks at anything that has happened and sees how it could be better. The E brain lives in the past. more than any other temperament type. If you can channel that E-ness in the right direction, it can be such a great strength. Instead of your E-ness naturally looking backward at what has happened, if you can say, okay, what's the best way to get through with where I am right now? Then the E strength of figuring out the best way can work to your benefit rather than to your detriment. You can just channel it and turn it toward now. Okay, what am I going to do now to prepare me better for the future? Then it's a really great way to use your E strength for your benefit instead of to your detriment. There's a huge difference between people that handle this moment well in their lives and people that don't. You cannot change the fact that you're where you are, but you absolutely have control over what you do with this moment in your life. And if you will take the time to learn about you, learn about your personality, learn about your temperament, learn how to be a healthy you, then you can pivot this moment and leverage this moment to become a healthier version of yourself, to heal well so that you can thrive as you move forward. You may not have chosen being here. If it were up to you, it may very well be true that you would still be in that relationship, but you're not. And what you do now will determine the trajectory of your life as you move forward from this moment in your life. And so, please take the time to learn about what landed you here, to learn about your personality, and what to do to move forward in a healthy and effective way so that you can get good results out of your life. If you haven't taken the assessment yet, please take the assessment. Find out what your primary and secondary type are. And then watch the next video where we go a little more in depth about some of the predictable strengths and challenges of each of the core types and help you be able to move forward with some of that.